Hey, everybody, welcome to Touching Tornadoes. My name is Conrad, and how are you, buddy? It's good to have you here, and thanks for finding it. I don't know how you found it. Maybe you were searching for bipolar, or maybe you were searching for mental health podcasts. Maybe you're struggling with something that's going on, and you're just trying to find something to relate to. Or maybe you're just really interested in tornadoes. I don't know, and you just listen to anything that has tornadoes in the title. So, whatever the reason, I'm glad you're here. Thank you. And if you can, please share the show. If you end up liking it, tell people about it, and we can grow the show, and we can grow the purpose of the show, and we can do that together. It's going to take everybody to do it. I understand that. I've been doing podcasting for a very long time, and although I just started with the Touching Tornadoes podcast, and I just started putting this project together. My experience in the medium is, it's pretty vast. I've been doing it since about 2010 to various levels of success, mainly the level where you're not successful. I would say it would be where I stayed at for the most part. But what happened, I guess we'll just go into it, is I started, I guess I don't know when I can say that my mental health journey or mental health, mm, I don't know when I can say it started, my disorder. I was diagnosed this past spring. I can tell you about that. I can tell you about when I was diagnosed, and I can tell you about kind of what happened leading up to that. But the thing is, once you're diagnosed, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, bipolar type 1, with psychotic features. So I got the whole gamut there. This past spring, at the end of April, around there, and so I was ending up. I was having a manic episode that kind of led me into the psychiatrist's office and got me the diagnosis. So the thing is, though, the year prior, this basically starting in around January or February of the year before, I started getting like kind of ramped up. I was we were getting ready to start a new business. My cousin and I had spent the previous few years building a taco truck and then turning it into a brick and mortar. We were going to open up a taco shop on Route 66. And so we bought this old building, this old Texaco building, and we turned it into a taco shop restaurant, and we backed our 1977 Airstream trailer into the Texaco garage of this classic building on Route 66. And the Airstream trailer was our taco truck. And so we'd been traveling around for a couple of years selling tacos and doing podcasts. And that was kind of my last creative attempt, my last creative journey that I had with podcasting. And so, but anyways, I guess that'd be 2023. The beginning of 2023, we were winding down the repairs and the renovation of our taco shop and getting ready to open. And we decided to open on Groundhog Day of that year, on February 2nd. I don't know if we decided to, or the world just kind of said, hey, you better open. You're about out of money, and we just got to see if this thing works. You can't procrastinate any longer. So we did. We opened up on Groundhog Day, ironically, and it was nuts. It was crazy. It was, we've been going to these small towns in Oklahoma for a couple of years by then, and doing shows and growing our social media presence and all that stuff. And everybody showed up, and everybody came in to get our tacos, and we weren't ready at all. We were as ready as we could be, I should say. So it was hectic and chaotic and nuts. And the funny thing is, or it's not really funny, but the kind of thing that led up to my diagnosis started that night. It started either that night or the following night or a second night. I can't quite remember. But I was standing, we had this huge line of people, and everybody was there. My wife and my kids were helping as much as they could. And we had a lady that we had hired to help us at the front counter, and my cousin and I, who had been the only two for the previous 2 years of it, were in the kitchen trying to, feed these hundreds of people who were coming in. And we were running in a kitchen that we'd never really practiced or prepared for, and we'd never really done any of this for. So we were trying to think of everything that we would need, all the stuff we would need, prepare for this whole influx of everything. And, when we got to there, just so much pressure, it was just chaotic and hellish. I mean, I imagine it's what everybody might go through when they open a restaurant, or I don't know. It was my first time, and it's just what it is. That's the words I would use, is chaos and hellish. And, that was kind of how it was. But it wasn't something that I wasn't totally unprepared for. I kind of expected it to be that, and that we just kind of have to learn while we're on our feet and go from there. But leading up to the opening, just that the end of the previous year and the first couple of months of 2023, I had noticed that I had started getting more and more anxious. And I kind of attributed that to the fact that we were getting the pressure of the situation, the pressure of, we're pouring all our resources into this place and we don't know if it's going to work. And it's a dream. And the real dream is doing a show and kind of incorporating our OK Taco show that we've been doing out of our trailer, and incorporating it into our business and figuring out how to do that. And so there's all these pressures and stresses that were building up. And so on that first or second night of opening, there's this moment where I was standing, and I was standing at the grill, and I felt like just this bolt of lightning. I felt like a flash of light went through me. My knees got weak, my legs got weak, and it kind of knocked me out for a second. And then I came to, I'm still standing, and I didn't, nothing really, nobody knew what happened. Nobody noticed that something like that had happened to me. I tried to describe it later to people, but it was like my mind was just split open at that moment. And it could have been a panic attack because we had so many people. It could have just been like a stress thing. It could have, I don't know. I mean, there's probably some sort of medical person that could tell you what it was based on that description for sure. But to me, it was totally foreign. And I didn't know what was going to happen when when I recovered from that, or, we closed that night. But what it ended up being was the start of me ramping up into my first like full blown manic episode. And I, even back then in that time, I didn't know what bipolar disorder was, and I didn't know, I wasn't aware to even be looking for it, to even be concerned about it. And so, my wife and I both, but I drank more than her. I was a daily drinker, as just like a habit every night. I'd have a few drinks every night before I went to bed. It kind of helped you fall asleep. And I've been doing that for years. But the problem was, once this all happened, the drinking picked up, mainly still when I'd get home at night, but instead of having a couple drinks before I'd fall asleep, you'd drink more and more, and I didn't notice it, and I wasn't getting tired, and it's like I couldn't shut down. And I had been in the habit up until then of like also daily exercise. I was a runner and doing daily runs, and I had pushed myself. I was doing like 5-mile runs a day. And before I would go in and work on the taco shop, and then, when we opened, my plan was to just keep up that commitment. I built up to it by starting running a mile a day, and I did that for like a year, and then moved up to 3 miles a day, and then I was at 5 miles a day, which sounds like an incredible, but it's like I was just jogging, and, I was running. It's not like I was sprinting them, they're 10-minute miles, take me like 45 minutes to an hour. So I'd exercise for 45 minutes to an hour a day. But I had noticed that I was staying up later and later, well past midnight. and not really being tired, just couldn't shut my brain off thinking about what we needed to do and still having the commitment and energy or trying to have to go run and then to go run this restaurant until 8 p.m. the next evening and then kind of keep this new rhythm up, this new thing up. But after that, what felt like my brain getting split, that's when I really started ramping it up. And, you get into, as that kind of unfolded, all of the things that I didn't, it was as if I um, had been touched by a divine source, is what it felt like. There's like I had died and come back. I know I described it like that. And because of that feeling, it gave me this sense of like, I'm here for a reason and it might even be bigger than all this. And so the grandiose thoughts, I didn't even know what that meant, but that's one of the symptoms of the disorder is these grandiose thoughts, people thinking that they're the second coming or that they have a direct line to some sort of messiah or all that. And I was trying to decipher where I fit in that at that time, like, which is kind of confusing too, because if you come from like a spiritual background or have any religion in your life, there is, prayer is that. Prayer is this part where you're talking to God directly. You get taught that that's what you're doing, but it was at that time where it felt like, yeah, God was talking back and, you had these, anyways, it got blown up out of proportion, I think, even to, you know, what a normal feeling within spirituality is. And I always say that because, upon becoming stable, I kind of feel like I'm in that zone now where it's not as elevated as, it's not even in the same kind of feelings. I don't know how to describe grandiose thinking other than in comparison to a stable baseline feeling, it is exponentially different. It is incredible. It's confusingly different. And so I had that going on. I had the lack of sleep going on the racing thoughts, the rapid speech. I just couldn't slow down on that. And so all of this was building up and my wife noticed it, and my wife's very smart and, she loves me very much and I wouldn't probably be here without her. Cause you got to remember this was 2022 that this kind of started in the beginning of that year, or 2023 in the beginning of that year. And she kind of had her suspicions, of what was going on then, knowing about bipolar disorder and starting to take my symptoms and my behavior and try to figure out what was wrong with me without me even knowing. But we were living in rural Oklahoma and there isn't a lot of mental health places to go. And she's right in the sense at that time, I don't know if she would have been able to talk me into that was what was going on with me. So what ended up happening was this continued after our opening, this manic behavior, and it escalated into just me feeling more and more like uh, I had an answer for everything and all these great ideas. It turned into I was just buying all kinds of crap for the restaurant that we didn't need at the time and thinking of these crazy ideas that we could implement into the restaurant and into the podcast, and thinking that um, my doing the show that we were doing there, like with all of this stuff was related to divinely to some kind of purpose, and there's a part where I do think that people have a purpose, and it just got weird is what I'm saying. It got too much. And thank God that I didn't, the other thing that happened is you get into the hypersexuality. Luckily that turned into me really just trying to uh figure out ways to explore that desire, that crazy elevated desire with my wife. I know a lot of, at least I've heard now, I love a lot of people that can really that can really screw up their relationships is because you just get this insane urge, this crazy, I guess, libido or whatever that comes. It's another one of the symptoms that comes with the disorder. But this all blew up. I mean, so we were open for only maybe a couple weeks, and time gets weird. You know, you feel like time, you can control time. I felt like I could control time and all this stuff when this was going on, and um, you know, it got so strange where I felt like the things that I was doing were being almost like you're being told to do it. Um, and it got real confusing for me too, because it is to the extreme that what was happening was wildly out of character. I think, or when you run a taco truck out of a 77 Airstream and you're driving around Oklahoma, you already are like on the edge. And so running a taco truck, had no experience prior to that of being in the food industry. And then we were at the same time, I was still working at my landscaping business in Kansas. So I was driving back and forth every weekend to try to keep, ends meet. And it just, so to think that I already was kind of living this odd out there lifestyle, chasing the podcasting dream, incorporating it with a food truck that then turned into a restaurant, and the restaurant was the home of the show, not just the food, and trying to put all that together. So when I say that, I was acting, we were kind of wild. The thing that we were doing, it's a wild idea. And so, but the things that happened during the mania of like the grandiose thinking, that kind of thing was to me the hardest. There would be, and the I would have hallucinations. Um, and at the time when people hallucinate, they don't know, you just think it's real. You think it's part, especially if you're experiencing the other symptoms, think it's part of it. And so, um, I'll maybe, or I'll probably, as this show kind of goes on and I get interaction from people that are listening to this, I can go into stories that I remember of and examples of, more specifically, of things that happened with my behavior. But just to kind of generalize it, after my mania, or in the midst of my mania back then, um, I kind of had this ultimate breakdown where I could have been arrested, maybe should have been arrested, but you know, but wasn't, and ended up having my partner drive me up to my dad's during this crazy thunderstorm, and taking me there, and then telling my dad to take me to my great uncle's. And I spent the week with him and kind of was able to get centered and calm down, and um, quit drinking at that time, like figuring he recommended that we don't, and it was not like, it's almost like I was using it as a self-medication, really, because once I stopped, it wasn't like it was hard to stop. And I know that sounds weird, but it wasn't, it didn't feel like that was what was causing it, and that was um what was making it worse or anything. It was like the stresses, and it's like my breaker got flipped. Is like my bubble burst or something. It is, you know, I guess really it's like what I said in the beginning. It felt like I died and come back, and sometimes it still feels like that. And I'll go into that more as this show progresses. But I wanted to start there. That's kind of my first history with it, and then as the year unfolded after that, I kind of stayed okay. I never got treatment professionally, and I felt like I was still running. I think I used my exercise and my running and as a way to self-medicate, like just pushing myself further and further that dangerously. Maybe, there was times when I would go off on a way longer than 5 mile run and go 10 miles or 15 miles with no water, no real preparation for that, just doing it on a random Sunday. And I was dressing, I felt still like I had to express myself. And so I dressed odd and weird. I don't know. It's not that it was odd or weird because people can dress however they want to dress. It's just for me, it was not what I had been wearing or acting or, up until that point. It was, and some of it, I mean, people's styles maybe can change and things can change in people's. That's why it's like, why did anybody stop? It's like, well, I'm always been a little weird. I was running a taco truck out of a 77 Airstream before that. And then, so it's like, what's normal? What's not normal? We don't know? Um, and it was kind of the same with me. Like my style and the different things that I would do had evolved, and things I would pick up on things and do them for silly bits and all these other things. So you know, being what is that word? Being extrinsic or eccentric. Being eccentric, that was something I would want to be, or be odd and different. And I don't know, but it never usually expressed itself in my outer appearance, in my outfits or stuff like that until this time, you know. So I would like to say that my symptoms, or I was able to get to a place where I wasn't such an elevated person, wasn't such a elevated persona at that time. And then, get through the remainder of 2022, I had a huge fallout with I pushed him away, my partner and my cousin in the show and in the business, um, kind of blaming him for what was going on with me. I was really struggling to find why I was having these feelings, what was going on with these emotions. And so the only thing I knew is like who's around me, what problems ever happened to me. So blaming my childhood on my mom, and blaming this situation that we were in where I was trying to work this business and my other business, and blaming the pressure of that on my partner, and thinking he wasn't helping enough and pushed him away, and have these huge just out of nowhere rage filled moments with him, and ultimately creating ultimatums for him to decide what he wanted to do, but not putting him in a position where there's any other choice other than like, oh, whatever, dude, I'll leave you alone. I could understand, like, this dude's crazy, I gotta leave him alone, something's going on with him. And to be fair to him and my wife and everybody that was around me at the time, everyone knew something was going on, but nobody really knew what and how to address it. And so the year kind of, it went on. My brother come down, my older brother, and he was helping, and then I was trying to put him up at my house. We had a tiny house, and so I had him living turned a shed into a bedroom for him and living out there. Things were weird and crazy, and we were doing I could make it work and kind of try to, which is what you do, is like plan and build, like, here's why we're going to do this. And I guess we're just going to have to do it like this for a while, and trying to do that. But the decision making wasn't sound or didn't make any sense, looking back at it. And so, but it took until the end of the year, in October time, when I'd finally told my wife, who was helping me on a daily basis with the business, and we were homeschooling our kids at the taco shop, and she's doing everything, with me, and trying to go along with it in whatever way that we could make it work. But, we had still had a house in Kansas, and the people that were renting it. We're moving out, and so I had said, let's go back, and if you want to, and she's like, yes, I want to, when that's close to our family and friends and her, people, a better support system for her and getting the kids back in the school that we want them to go to and stuff like that, and so we moved back, eh, but that led into this past year where, or this year, getting through the holidays. There's just so many moments that I can go into of, uh, I would say chaos or breakdowns, like mental breakdowns that have happened, and it all led up to again another one happening in the spring of this year, 2024, and it's the one where I got taken to the psychiatrist and got diagnosed, and then there's a whole story of what's been happening since my diagnosis. So it's a lot, and I can get more specific with all of it as the show moves on and as, you know, whatever needs to be. To me, I'm kind of treating the show as therapy, this Touching Tornadoes, as a version of therapy for myself to process the things that um, I've went through and I put my family through and the things that they've supported me through. And, I would be without my family, without my wife and my children, but my wife really being the rock, and without my in-laws and my dad and mom and everybody kind of trying to build this nest around me, um, to fall into or to some kind of way to catch me throughout all of this, I don't know where I'd be. So I'm really grateful for my wife specifically for noticing and having the courage to force me or to force my hand to go this year and actually get professional help and get diagnosed and know that something's wrong and then be on my team and on, throughout what has happened since the diagnosis. So it's been crazy and insane are two great words to describe it, but I feel like although it's taken up until this point, although it's taken a long time, I feel like I'm able to process it now, and getting out of it. Because once I crashed, it's like I was manic or hypomanic for almost an entire year or more. Like I had a manic episode, went down into like hypomania, and then went back up into a manic episode. And then after getting diagnosed this year, like crashing hard and having this realization of the things that were not me or not in my character flooding back into my brain, and also in not knowing how to process the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment and all that stuff that people have, even if it's only a couple of days of like manic behavior and not living like that for such a long time, or just this elevated persona and behavior that I've been living under or had been living under for a long time. Um, but the reason I started this show is because this is what I want to do. I want to do a podcast. I want to do, this is what I've been trying to do for over 15 years, around 15 years. I've been trying to do a show, and my older shows that was doing before were like, the buddy comedy shows, a group of friends getting together and doing a comedy show. And they're still out there. But and I don't think that they're bad. I just never really got a big audience of them. I was never able to do them, as a living or anything like that. But they were fun and I was passionate about it. And this is what I want to do. And in my last, that's what when we started the taco shop, we had a show, the OK Taco Show, and that was what I thought would turn into my career. It was a way to do both, it was a way to make money, off of a podcast, like make a living doing a podcast, which has been a goal of mine forever. And so when I got diagnosed and when the realization of, having this mental disorder, this mental illness hit me and I didn't know how to process that, I shut down everything. I just shut down all my projects and all the things that I'd been doing. And I really separated myself from who I was because at least for me, when I got diagnosed, it was like, uh-oh, what was good about me before? How long have I been bad? And you just kind of, at least I just put this huge wall in front of all of what I was before and had this new version, but I had no identity, nothing to go bounce off of, nothing to pick me up, and scared of all of it because, if what am I going to keep? Like was what I do, what I was doing, what caused it, and so if that's what it is, it's like, you don't want to do any of it. And some of that's good. I quit drinking. I haven't had any of that kind of stuff since I got diagnosed or since like the beginning of my diagnosis. And since June, I've been, on the sober train, which there's a part where I thought that'd give me like this extreme amount of energy, but it definitely hasn't. We'll go into that as this show kind of evolves, as Touching Tornadoes evolves into what it's going to evolve into. And so anyways, when I was in my depression, which happened after I was diagnosed in this past spring and into the summertime, to get me out of it I was reading some books, mainly audiobooks, about bipolar disorder and learning about the disorder and kind of finding ways to relate to the authors and to the things that were being described on what it is and that I have it and all this stuff. And then once I kind of exhausted those resources or felt like they were getting repetitive, um, I was turning to podcasts and I was just searching for bipolar disorder or mainly that. There's a lot of mental health podcasts, but I was more specifically looking for what I had so I could find, and there's a handful of them out there, but I felt like there was a need a little bit, or there might be, maybe this is where I belong, maybe my voice maybe I could help more people being here after going through the things that I've went through, and maybe I can relate to others who have bipolar disorder or a mental illness. And I'm sure that I know that for me, when I was listening to other shows, it really helped me. There's some that were on psychosis and some that were on just the different aspects of the disorder, and hearing people's stories about it. It really was like, oh my gosh, I'm not, you always hear that you're not alone and you're not the only one and all this other stuff, but it's all platitudes until you finally get to put a voice to it or hear somebody else's story that's open, and so it got me interested in that. I started listening to other people's lived experiences with bipolar disorder, and I started having the seed planted inside of my head of, well, maybe, that's something I can do, because, I was in a pretty deep depression now, and I was unfamiliar with what depression really was at that point. And I'm sorry, but I'm also late diagnosis. I'm 38, and so my first real episode started when I was 36 and, lasted until I was 37 and then got diagnosed and at right around here this year turned 38. And so most people who are diagnosed with the disorder, it happens in their early 20s. And looking back on my life, it's like, well, there might have been a lot of times I was hypomanic and I could have been living. I mean, just when I go into it as our podcast continues and moves on in the future, I think that you'll find that probably a lot of my habits were leaning towards maybe I've always been a little bit of hypomanic. That allowed me to accomplish the kind of schedule that I'd kept for so many years. But anyways, uh, looking for others to relate to, it planted the seed like maybe this is where my voice is. Maybe this is where I can do my podcast. Maybe I can find a place here where I can help people using my lived experience. And it's kind of weird when you just get diagnosed and you're in the middle of depression. But the thing that helped me is like, well, maybe I can help other people. And I've always not even I've always wanted to and been drawn to those who, have some sort of disorder and always kind of had a heart to help them or wanting to help them. And what kind of brought me out of the depression was the thought that maybe I could do something. Maybe I could start a blog, or started looking into that and realizing that you can become a peer supporter. And so getting certified in that, even though I really haven't done anything with it, but just getting my certified peer support and just learning more about how others, just by sharing their story, can help people. And so I thought, well, that's all I've ever done for the past 15 years is just share my life. That's what our other shows were. Basically me talking about my crazy ideas or my crazy look on life, and trying to find a different humorous angle about normal topics, and usually being surrounded by a group of friends that would basically make fun of me for having those ideas, and we play along that way. That's what our shows were always built on. So maybe there is a part where everything, which I do believe everything kind of happens for a reason. And so maybe that's why my past of storytelling and podcasting and trying to do this has led up to maybe this is how I help people. That's what I got to thinking. And if it doesn't turn out that way, that's okay. I think doing it will help me. So at least help me process it in another way. And we'll go into like things that I do now to help. And the weird thing is a lot of this is still so foreign to me and so different than what I have been for so many years, coming from my background of kind of just rub some dirt on it and it's all in your head and all that stuff. And to a certain degree, it literally is all in your head. That's one thing that is kind of true. It is all in my head. But if I can't control some of the connections even if I try as I might control it, maybe I wasn't able to. And I lost control there for a while for sure. So, but I've developed some, or, you get told through therapy and through your research, some different things that you can do to either help you get out of depression or to help you stay stable and stay away from the mania and all that stuff. I'll just go over some of the things that I've been doing. The biggest one, I still think, and it was scary for a while. I was running so much and had been running for so many years and built up to this thing that when I got diagnosed and once it kind of all sunk in and I started falling into my depression this summer, I did quit. I quit running for as if I never even had done it. I quit a lot of things that happened at that time, but coming out of it, in order to kind of start getting out of the depression finally, I did have to start running. And the weird thing about that, the depression, is you get this guilt inside of you too. Or at least I did, where, me giving up on my streak of exercise, my streak of days in a row of exercise, brought a lot of shame and guilt on me on top of everything else. And then to have people telling me like, well, if you don't want to get out of depression, go exercise. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been doing that my whole, no, that didn't help me any. I'm here. But I will, it did. Once I finally put my shoes back on and started slow again and started running, I feel like it kind of brought back like, okay, it wasn't the running per se that caused the mania. It was my mania that caused me to run like a maniac at times. If that makes sense. But we'll go to the stories as it goes. So I guess my one tip is exercise. People are going to tell you that. You already know that it's one of the best things for mental health or for brain health or for depression is exercise, and it's no joke. I do think it's works about as good, if not better than anything. But sticking to it to get yourself to do it while depressed, it's almost like I don't even know how to describe. Telling somebody that's depressed to go out and exercise is insulting. Like it's hurtful almost when you're really in the midst of depression. So I get it if you're still laying down and not even wanting to leave the house, and maybe all you can do is listen to this. Maybe all you can do is listen to a show where somebody gets it. And so I'm trying to be that. I want to be that. Um, I want to be able to take all the stuff that I've been through and turn it and use it for good, even if the good is to give somebody out there a way to relate to it. So, or relate to their disorder. And I just also want to use each time to be able to say how lucky and grateful I am that I have the support and the family I have, and the wife I have in order to have gotten through to this point. And I know she's concerned that I'm even attempting to do this show or wanting to get into this, but that's a different thing. There's this huge part of a person where, to me, it's like I've wanted to do a show for so long, and I don't know if I want to do a show about mental health. I don't know if I want to do a show about, being bipolar and talking about that kind of stuff. I don't. I want to do a show where I don't have bipolar. I want to do a show where, that would be better. But sometimes, in an attempt to say something without being at risk of sounding like it's grandiose, it's like, I think we have a purpose. I think that we're all here for a reason. We're all here for a unique reason. And if there's anything, I took a break from all of this, all of the podcasting, all of that kind of thing. And I have this inside of me telling me like, that's what you want to do. Why aren't you doing what you want to do? Go back to doing, that is your purpose. So I don't know. I don't know if people believe in that or not, but I guess to me, it doesn't hurt as long as I can not think that again, it's kind of like exercising obviously doesn't hurt people, but there is a way to exercise that is harmful. And thinking that you have a purpose doesn't hurt people because you do have one. But thinking that you can fly, probably not a great thing. So anyways, I'm going to stop here today. And if you guys like the show, please share it. It stinks that you're like, been doing it for so long and be like, well, I'm just getting started, because it's like, I haven't, but we are just getting started. It's the ground floor of what we got going on here in the mental health arena. And I'm hoping to be able to stake my claim, my little corner somewhere here in the internet to where I can be helpful to somebody. So if you like the show and you enjoy and want to hear more or have any questions, you can reach out on Instagram on Touching Tornadoes, or just email touchingtornadoes@hotmail.com, or visit the website touchingtornadoes.com and the blog there, and make sure you share it with others. And if you have anybody that is going through like some mental health, share it with them, and we'll hopefully can grow this. And my purpose can be to do this. I can finally have found my way. So, um, and if not, I'll just use it as therapy. So it'll work either way. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you later. Be good to yourself.